You're listening to GotTechED the Podcast with your hosts, Eric Guise and Nick Johnson. Welcome back to GotTechED the Podcast. This is episode 99 called Teaching Resources to Check Out During the Holidays. In this episode, Guise and I will introduce some exciting events for this holiday season and our upcoming 100th episode. We'll also reflect on some things we are thankful for in education, including some of our favorite podcasts, books, and inspirational educators. This is another episode you don't want to miss. Check it out.
All right, so we're back with episode 99. This is our last one in double digits. We've been talking about the 3-digit milestone for a little bit right now, so it's good to finally be here so we could kind of be quiet about it and just podcast.
Yeah, it's very exciting. We've been mentioning episode 100 a lot over the past episodes. A lot of those mentions were saying that we were planning it. We weren't really planning it because we weren't exactly sure what we were going to do, but you came up with a pretty good idea just out of nowhere, as you typically do this past week. So we've got something in place for episode 100, and I think we're going to tease that a little bit on this episode. Is that correct? Just to kind of start spreading the word, get some interest going?
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. I mean, one thing that we take pride in is researching EdTech tools and also coming up with different ways to incorporate these EdTech tools. So for our episode 100, what we're going to do is we're going to pick 10, 12 of our favorite topics, and we're going to dive a little bit deeper into those topics, and we're going to do almost like a 12 days of EdTech. Maybe that's what we call it, 12 days of EdTech, where each day you'll get a new topic to kind of look at, or a new part of teaching with EdTech that you can use to help better your teaching practice and maybe increase productivity and things like that.
Yeah, so it's sort of like a whole bunch of mini podcasts, but instead we're going to be pushing out a new one of these each day. So it's a big challenge for us, or a big task to do this, because that's a lot of work, but we think we can get it done. One new video each day that's going to feature some topic, and that's why it's sort of the idea of like a mini podcast episode every day. These are going to be released on YouTube, so we're sort of trying to bring back our YouTube channel a little bit as well, just to give you some ideas of some of our initial things and what you can expect. We talked about doing like let's just say 5 ways, may not be 5, but 5 ways to make your Canva images pop. So, we talk about Canva a lot as a great tool for your class to do student projects, and the kids can log in there and do stuff for free. Well, here's 5 tips to make those images better, make those projects better.
Yeah, the key that you said there is that it's free. Educators, go over for Canva for Education. You could just Google that and get 30 free seat licenses for your classroom. It's amazing. It's an amazing tool, and that's an amazing deal. We do not get any type of a kickback for saying that, but it's just such a quality tool that enhances learning in the classroom and makes students excited. So Nick is a little bit of a guru when it comes to Canva. He's the artistic one, so he's going to help you out there. Me, I'm going to focus on things like gamification, and I'm going to talk about some of my favorite ways to gamify the classroom using different EdTech tools and some of the strategies that I've learned over the past couple of years, or that I frequently implement into the classroom over the last couple of years.
Another cool one that I was kind of toying around with is some sort of a spin on video projects, or I may call it student video projects, but who knows? A lot of this stuff, it can double for teachers and students, which is what's so great about it. But there's just so many different video things that are happening out there. It seems like even tools that didn't start as screencasting tools or video production tools, they're building that in. And that software must be getting easier to sort of build and create as time goes on. So maybe I'll share some of those and some projects that your kids can do with some of these new tools that are out there. I've mentioned in recent episodes like Edpuzzle, where you sort of are annotating YouTube videos with questions they have their own video recorder now, so you can build stuff directly in Edpuzzle, and that's the kind of thing we're seeing more and more. So I'm going to sort of try to catalog a bunch of that stuff and share it out with people. But these are the types of things that we're going to be sharing, and I think the way we've got it set up is, for our 100th episode, we're going to run down the list of our 12 videos for the 12 days of EdTech. We'll share the titles of them once we've got it all worked out, and we'll kind of tease each one. So if I'm going to do 5 ways to make Canva images pop, maybe in episode 100, I'll share one of those ways, and then say on this date, the video comes out, and if you watch it, then you'll get the other 4. That's the way I understand our format right now. How's that sound?
That works for me. I mean, we're going to have a big graphic that we're going to share out on Twitter, and
right.
if you want to look at all 12 of them in one day, that's fine, but we're going to showcase one each day.
You can follow GotTechED outside the podcast at GotTech.com or on Twitter at WeGotTechED.
Let's get into episode 99 a little bit. And we kind of called this segment the game of 2 things. And that's really the meat of the episode. Around the holidays, especially Thanksgiving, we like to talk a little bit about what we're thankful for. So today what we're going to do is first we'll start off with 2 questions just to get us warmed up. And then we'll go into some of our favorite podcasts that we're listening to right now. And it's not all just teaching podcasts. I know I chose some outside of the podcasting for teachers realm. Talk about some books that we're looking forward to, cracking open. I know I have like 4 or 5 on my nightstand that I haven't been able to read lately, just trying to keep my head above water. So I like to do that over break. And then a couple of educators that have inspired us lately. So we're very thankful for them as well.
A lot of these lists sort of came out of 2 questions that we've been dealing with a lot, and we're going to kick it off with those 2 questions. One of them is just kind of where EdTech teaching is right now and the state of that and what we're seeing. We're I don't know if we're deep in this world, but we're in this world of EdTech and trying to share information out there, right? So we see some things, we talk to people, and I don't know if it's a tough time for EdTech right now, but it does seem to be, I don't know if teachers are maybe overwhelmed is the best word with the EdTech that's out there or burnt out after using so much of it all the time. But it's like it's almost like there's 2 things happening because there's so much great new stuff, and I feel like it's just changing faster than ever. But at the same time, it's almost hard to keep up with it, and I think that we're seeing some of that reflected for teachers out there. Do you know what I'm talking about? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm going to put a different spin on it
Sure.
a little bit. I'm going to call it the EdTech hangover.
Yeah.
All right. During COVID, there are a lot of people out there with great ideas that had a little bit of time that they could sit down and start developing. And I feel like they made more EdTech. And now that they're finally ready to launch it or release it, I feel like everyone has that hangover, and the last thing that they want to do is go back and learn more EdTech. That's what I kind of feel like, and I feel like a lot of us are there. And I'm not going to lie, I simplified my practice a lot during COVID, and I tried to use things that I knew how to use very well for different purposes, and we actually did an episode on that. And I just feel like that's where I'm at still. I still am at, using my tried and true, my EdTech toolkit that I did the first episode of this year. Solo, not my favorite episode. I'd rather work together on these and
right.
bounce ideas off, but we got through it. And I do stick by those tools that are in my EdTech toolkit. And I encourage everybody to try to get a list of EdTech tools that you use for a specific purpose and stick with them until you find something that will surpass the functionality, the cost, and other factors that we look at. But bringing it back to EdTech burnout and the EdTech hangover, yeah, I think that this year has been a lot of that. And I do see us teachers going back to a lot of the practices that we used before the pandemic. And I don't think it's because we have a lack of time or anything like that. I just think that we're tired and we're still trying to recoup from the last year and a half.
Yeah, I think putting it as an EdTech hangover is smart and accurate, and I think it also leads me to how this will resolve, how I think and hope it will resolve, which is just time. Just like any hangover, it just takes time, man. And once you've re-simplified, like you sort of just said, and you go back to your core, I don't know if values are the word, but these core tools that you use. Doesn't have to be an EdTech tool, but you sort of refocus and recenter, regain your footing. I think a lot of this stuff and the motivation to learn new and try new things is going to come back. And I hope that's what we're going to see. And I think we're going to see it probably after this holiday season.
Yeah, and when I said that teachers are not using as much EdTech and they're reverting back to old practice, I don't mean that they're up there lecturing. They are going back to being creative in different ways without the use of EdTech. I see a lot of station rotation activities and great PBL going on. So I don't want to discredit teachers in any way because I still think they're working as hard as ever. I just feel that we're taking a break from EdTech, and I think that's okay.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't want to discredit anybody either, and I'll sort of tie this into the other question we were going to bring up here, which is your biggest aha moment of the year so far. Mine has been exactly what you just talked about, sort of refinding, I guess non-tech things is the word, but just refinding those things that you do that are so important and focusing on them. One of mine has been, when I'm doing a flipped classroom, which much of my chemistry courses now are done via a flipped classroom style. Last year, I gave up every single piece of paper, went fully digital for the entire year, and it was great. I loved it, and I am still mostly doing that. But this year, one of my aha moments has been that sometimes I need and I like, and the kids need and they like to have a piece of paper in front of them for certain things. So I have started to, in very small ways, bring back that old school handout, whether it's for an image that I want them to annotate and sort of just draw on quickly to keep track of some thoughts, and I don't want to have to deal with getting everybody into some, I don't know, let's just say Google Drawings or whatever the application is going to be, and then there's this tech issue and that tech issue, and this kid's Chromebook isn't charged so they can't do it, and I've got to think of something on the fly. If I want it to work and I know it's going to work and I know I'm ready, I'm still printing out that piece of paper for certain things. I'm definitely not going back where I'm printing out paper for everything because that was not as good and I like the digitized stuff. But one of my aha moments has been what you're talking about, just sort of refining those things that work really well and being okay with not forcing yourself to use tech all the time.
Yeah, I think that's a great aha moment, and I think that you explained it in a way that probably will resonate with a lot of the listeners. Mine's a little different, and I can't take credit for this aha moment. Someone else kind of inspired me on it, but then I thought about it for a long time. But when you think about our ninth graders, their last regular school year was when they were in sixth grade. And our seniors, the last regular school year that they completed was ninth grade. Okay, so I don't know. I could tell a difference in maturity level. I could tell a difference in behavior. I can tell a difference in work ethic. And unfortunately, I think these are areas that are also the areas that we as teachers need to give them a little bit of grace on. We need to help them out when it comes to this type of stuff and how to study, because those are big developmental years that a lot of students missed out on. So it's almost like we have to give them a crash course. So my big aha moment is, it isn't a regular school year, and it won't be a regular school year for quite some time. And students have gone through a lot, teachers have gone through a lot, and we just want to continue allowing people within the educational system to have a little bit of grace and understand that we're still trying to figure out how to walk again. We got knocked down, but we're getting back up, and it's going to take a little bit of time. So it's similar with what you said with the time factor.
Yeah, we're going to see that with the kids too, and I've noticed a big difference already in my some of my sophomore students. Like you said, even though they're sophomores, this is their first year doing like real high school because last year they were home, and it just wasn't the same. So for sure, there's a difference in them and what they can do and with the supports they need. But I have noticed that they are starting to sort of re-find their footing. So like you said, I think time is the key here, and I'm excited to see that happening. And let's use that to springboard into our selections for today. So if you've been dealing with some of these same issues, or if you've had these same questions and thoughts, then maybe some of these resources that Guise and I are thankful for and that we've been finding, great information in will help out some of you guys as well. And I think we'll start with our podcast selections. We brought 2 resources apiece in here. So I'm going to have 2 podcasts. Guise is going to have his 2 books apiece, and then 2 educators apiece. And I'll start off with my 2 podcasts. One of them is a little bit more on the fun side, a little bit more on the entertaining side. It's a podcast called Teaching Keating with Weston and Molly Kieshnik. And I'm sorry, guys, if I pronounced your name incorrectly, but Teaching Keating is the name of the show. It's just a different spin on educational shows. This is a husband and wife pair, which by itself I think is pretty cool. What they do is they use iconic teaching moments from pop culture, typically movies and television, and some of them are a bit of a stretch. I'll give you some examples in a second, but anything that has to do with teaching in some way from a movie or TV show, and they use that as sort of like the basis to talk about instruction and real practice, which is sort of what we wanted to feature here today, and this podcast definitely does that. But it's just kind of a fun way to do it, right? Because you get to talk about a movie, talk about a TV show, and how that relates to something you do. Like I said, I like it because it's a fun listen. It's relaxed, it's casual, but it always does bring it back to that practice element, which, if I'm going to put some time into a podcast, I want it to, if I'm going to put some time into a teaching podcast, let's say that, I want it to actually help my teaching. So this is a great one, Teaching Keating, and just to give you some idea of the types of movies and TV shows they use, these guys do about an episode a month, so their October one was built off of The Secret Life of Pets. September was about The Bourne Identity. Horrible Bosses, a pretty funny movie. They use that one to sort of tie in leadership in schools. Moana was another recent one. So a lot of these, are used as the springboard to talk about teaching. Really great and just a fun listen. If you want to go a little bit more on the, direct, just a blast of straight up information, you can check out my second choice, which is the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast. It's sort of the flip of my last example in that they do an episode every single day throughout the course of a 5-day week. So 5 episodes a week. Each one is on a different theme. They have sort of running themes like a Motivational Monday, or my personal favorite, of course, EdTech Tool Tuesday, and the list goes on. But they're very short. They interview other teachers, which is always a little more interesting. And it's just like a very quick way to get information. This is Vicki Davis. You can find her at Cool Cat Teacher. And it's for sure one of my favorite shows out there right now. I know we were supposed to only bring 2, but I have to always mention my true favorite podcasts of all time, Stuff You Should Know. It's not about teaching, but it is about learning. And if you don't listen, you got to check it out. They're one of the biggest shows of all time as far as podcasts go, so they do not need our support. But I'm going to give it to them anyway because I love it so much. And you should tell your students about it because they just really emphasize the fun and importance of learning in general. So those are my podcast picks.
2 solid selection. Honorable mention is also very solid, but I'm only giving you credit for 2 because that's how many we were supposed to pick.
Fair enough.
Teaching Keating is pretty cool. Those shows that they focus on happen to be some of my son's favorite, so I'm very familiar with those. I look forward to going to check that out. Vicki Davis is an absolute amazing edu rock star. Really love what she does over there. I like the little bite-sized podcast that she has. It's one that I frequent a lot. For me, I went a different way, and I think right now what our students need, what some of our teachers need, especially the younger ones that may not have gotten a full student teaching experience because of COVID or whatever it may be, I switched to listening to some leadership podcasts. So I'm just going to name the two, and then I'll kind of give you just a little bit on them. But they're very similar, but they're different. So the first one is Coaching for Leaders. And that one is one that I saw a quote, and then I saw the name of this podcast. And I love the quote, "Leaders aren't born, they're made." I truly believe that. And so that one drew me in just based on that quote on their website when I was looking through stuff. And there's no way I'm going to pronounce this guy's name right. But Dave Stachowiak, Stachowiak. He has tons of episodes, and he discovers leadership through wisdom. And his wisdom comes from conversations that he has with his guests. He has tons of guests out here, and a lot of them have awesome topics in which they discuss. For example, effective delegation of authority. That's one. How to build psychological safety. How to negotiate when others have power. So these are awesome topics that they're going over. The episodes aren't terribly long. It's enough that when I listen to it on my commute and my way back, I usually have a podcast episode finished. But there's always one or two things at least that I could take away and reflect on, and that's important to me. The second one that I have is The Engaging Leader with Jesse Leahy. This one is a lot like the first one, that he has some guests and things like that. They all have over a couple hundred episodes, which is super impressive. But this one looks at taking challenges and overcoming them. And he'll pick a group to kind of sit down, and he'll look at that group versus another group, like men versus women, and how these challenges look different, and how we could close the gap between them and maybe help solve some of these problems. So there's a lot of guests on his episodes as well, and it's pretty awesome. And like I said with the last one, there's always something I'm taking away and reflecting on, which is helping me be a better person, better educator, and better leader.
I like those picks too, and I like how you focused on leadership. I think it doesn't get, I don't know if it gets brought up enough how important that is, even if, it's easy to say, leadership is important if you want to try and move into an administrative role, right? Because then you're a leader, or coaching because you have to lead your team. But even separate from that, as a teacher, you have to lead your class. You're leading a very large group of people with an insane amount of different needs. So I think a teacher, maybe more than any other profession, you have to lead every day, all day almost. And a podcast, or this set of podcasts that helps you with that, I don't know if enough teachers are paying attention to leadership skills like they should be. So those are good ones.
Yeah, I just want to share one of the takeaways. And it wasn't something that was directly said within either one of these two podcasts, but when I say that it's important for myself to reflect, this is a big growth moment for me. I don't know how I got on the track, but I know I listened to one of each of the previous mentioned podcasts. And I was thinking about leadership and kind of what it meant to me and things like that. And I remember a quote that someone told me, "If you want to lead, walk behind them." And from there, my mind, and this is just how I think, I'm all over the place. But from there, I'm thinking military and how you have a leader of the front line, and they're always in the front line. I'm thinking like Braveheart, and I'm getting very theatrical here, but I'm thinking like Braveheart and The Patriot, where Mel Gibson, he's leading from the front. But the thing that doesn't make sense to me is when you're in the front, you can't see what's going wrong. In sports, one of the most important positions in baseball is the catcher. Why? Because the catcher can see everything that everyone else is doing, and that person can lead by seeing everything and pointing out the weaknesses. We could keep doing this with sports. You have a goalie in soccer. The goalie has to be the most voiced person out there because that person can see everything within the defense and offense. and they could see things that other people can't see. So for me, I look at that quote, lead from behind, and it makes a lot of sense. But then when you're asked to lead by example, that's a quote that kind of goes, you want to be seen, you want to be up front so other people can follow your footsteps in the way that you're handling a situation. So to be a complete leader, I feel, and this is my takeaway, you have to know when to be up front and when to be behind. And I think all that kind of just came full circle from listening to 2 episodes. And I think it just makes me understand leadership a little bit better.
Yeah. So like I said, a lot of people can benefit from that type of insight, and you definitely are going to want to check out those picks for our podcasts. Let's talk about books now. Same deal. We each brought in 2 book selections. I'll start with my 2. One of them is called Out of Our Minds, Learning to Be Creative by a guy called Ken Robinson. This is a really popular book. I'm going to start off just with a quote. This is the quote that's shared if you go to buy the book, and a lot of reviews will feature this same quote, but I think it sums it up. It says, "It is often said that education and training are the keys to the future. They are, but a key can turn in 2 directions, turn in one way, and you lock resources away, even from those they belong to. Turn it the other way, and you release resources and give people back to themselves. Learning to be creative." That was the end of the quote, by the way. So what this is talking about here is just learning to be creative, and that's what this book is really all about. Because, one of the key things as a teacher, besides leadership, like we just talked about, is constantly growing and constantly thinking of new things. It keeps you excited, it keeps you passionate, and that translates down to the students. So just, creativity is, everybody has it, I think, but it can wane. You know what I mean? It can slow down over time. You can stop doing it if you get comfortable and you just want to print off that same worksheet from year to year. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But you may find more success if you stay creative. You may find more joy in your teaching if you stay creative. And this book does a really great job of helping you do that. If you do sort of get complacent and lose your teaching creativity, it can be tough to find again. So maybe a book like this is what you'll need to sort of get started. And this is, I chose it because I haven't read it yet and I want to. I also chose it because it's really well regarded in terms of being creative, and a lot of it applies specifically to teachers. I think it's one of the best books for teachers out there to help get them inspired. And, it's a smaller subset of what this book is about is acting differently towards each other. So just treating people with kindness and sort of understanding where everybody is coming from. And I think you can't go wrong with a little bit of that from time to time. So check it out, Out of Our Minds, Learning to Be Creative. My second choice is, you may be a little bit more familiar with. It's called Teach Like a Pirate by Dave Burgess. We've talked about this man and his tools before on the podcast. So it's sort of based on he's got lots of things like Outrageous Teaching and Teach Like a Pirate seminars. You can find Dave's stuff all over the place. And this book sort of just builds off of that. He's got all sorts of things centered around, really anything you can think of. So engaging lessons, extremely engaging lessons that really draw students in, I think is the main pull here. Some of the stuff in this book is going to be focused on rapport and how to build that with your students. Some of the stuff in this book is going to be about just inspirational methods that people aren't using, hooks for lessons that you can use. I think there's like 30 different hooks in this book that you can use to start off, tapping into your passion as a teacher, something that sort of ties in with my other book selection. So it's just one of the best resources that are out there. So Teach Like a Pirate, Dave Burgess, that's my second pick.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people are reading those books. They have good hooks at the beginning. That was a joke.
I get it. It's funny.
Are you sure? No, both great selections there. I really like the first one myself. anything that has to do with learning how to be creative, especially that's the kick that we've been on.
Right.
But, Dave Burgess, he has a craft and he's very good at it.
It's good.
And it's a great book. I've already read that one, so you'll have fun with that one. I have 2 books that I'm looking forward to reading. The first one just came out. It's called Educational Duct Tape and EdTech Integration Mindset. That's with Jake Miller. I'm sure a lot of people have heard that. I've seen a lot of positive things about the book and a lot of advertisements and things like that. But I really like his metaphor. I'm super jealous of his metaphor of duct tape. I mean, that was just brilliant right there. I use duct tape for everything. Just moved into a house, and I have duct tape so many boxes. It's unbelievable. And unduct tape so many boxes. It's unbelievable. But, just problem solving, being creative, finding different ways to get things done. I think that's just the name of the game. And I've always been jealous of that metaphor that he uses. And I look forward to taking a look at his book and getting in the mindset of Jake Miller, who is doing a lot of great things out there. My second one is Atomic Habits, and it's written by James Clear, and he's an expert on habit formation and how to break habits and how to master behaviors that's going to give you the results that you want. So in this book, I know that there's a framework in there, and that was important to me because I'm a science guy and I like to follow steps. Except for when I cook, then there's no ingredient. Like, I just pick ingredients and I don't measure anything out. And, most of the time it turns out okay. Some other times, I'm just my biggest critic. But, I'm very much looking forward to Atomic Habits just because it's not something that I would typically read. And I think if I want to grow personally and professionally, I need to challenge myself to read new genres.
Both of your selections, I'm jealous of their titles. Like you said, Educational Duct Tape, that's, it's genius right there because the metaphor is so obvious but so smart. And then even Atomic Habits, it just kind of gets the point across. So I like their names. I know Educational Duct Tape very well, as most of our listeners probably do. It's just awesome. Okay, so let's wrap it up with our 2 picks apiece for inspirational educators. My first one isn't an educator at all, but it is an account that features a ton of different educators and the cool stuff they do. It's called We Are Teachers. I may have even talked about this before. It's just a really great Twitter follow for the general educator. So regardless of your interests, you don't have to be a tech person. You don't have to be of a particular grade level. Following We Are Teachers, they just have tons of cool stuff, and they share it all the time. So some of the recent ones are like, a post that has 24 of cool winter science experiments or 22 education conferences to check out in 2022. It's a lot of the same stuff that, Guise and I try to do here with our podcast. They just have 40,000 followers and push out tons of stuff all the time because they're a much bigger group of people. And it's great. I get tons of information, tons of inspiration. Sometimes they tweet out funny things. Sometimes they tweet out stories of specific teachers, which is why I included it on my list here. And it's one that I highly encourage people to grab and to check out. The other one is an educator called Tony Vincent. Tony is an educator. He's a speaker. He is a former 5th grade teacher, and he's a great follow for anybody that is interested in graphics and graphic design in the educational world. I am interested in graphics and graphic design in the educational world. So for me, Tony Vincent is an awesome follow. He just shares out tons of really cool things related to that world of designing things and student projects and being better at design, being better at tech in general. He shares all kinds of really cool stuff. In particular, if you're talking about Tony Vincent, you also have to talk about his website, learninginhand.com. there's a lot I could talk about from learninginhand.com, but maybe the two main things, at least right now, is the conference, sort of a conference, maybe more of like an online workshop called Classy Graphics. That kind of says it all right there. You can sign up. Right now, this is running November 10 through December 21st, and it's just has really great stuff. And for anybody that is interested in this, this arena of education like I am, you're going to want to check it out. The other really cool thing that's featured there on learninginhand.com is something called Shapegrams. It's instructional videos, drawing tips, encouragement to help people get better at their design skills. And Shapegrams is sort of like Tony's creation here, sort of built off of Google Drawings, and it's just a really, really cool thing to check out. So, I think that's the best. You could almost do an entire episode on Tony Vincent, I think, because he's got so many cool resources here. But I'll leave it at that for now, just to keep it as short and sweet as possible. So those are my two educator, in quotes, picks, because my first one was not. But We Are Teachers on Twitter and Tony Vincent, who you can follow at Tony Vincent.
Two awesome picks there. Tony is one that I follow as well. He's a problem solver, and I like that. And solving problems into pictures or infographics and images, I think that's a great way of going about things. So that's a great follow. I'm going to go with two that I've connected with recently. One I've connected with over the last couple of years, and one was just as recent as last week. And the first one is Tim Belmont. He's a New Jersey English teacher, 9th grade. He's a tech specialist, Google trainer, ISTE educator, and he likes to post things that are different, in my opinion. For example, I'll give you one that he just posted recently. He said, "Today in English, we put our screens away and replaced them with paper, pencils, and 10-sided dice. Students rolled the dice to determine starting points for their very short stories." So he comes up with some very interesting ways to get things into the classroom. I know that he just was a guest presenter for NJECC, and he did a presentation on podcasting, and he gave us a shout out for HVSPN, which was awesome and very nice of him. But he's also in Twitter chats. I see him there, and he's very active, and he's just shares a lot. So make sure that you follow Tim Belmont. It's at tbelmontedu. That is my first one. And my second one is Dana Goodyear. And Dana Goodyear is the host of Out of the Trenches podcast. And I just met with her for a pre-episode interview, and I will be on an episode of that. I will be recording it within the next couple of weeks. But I'm looking very, very, very much forward to doing that interview with her, because it's going to challenge me in a couple different ways, personally, professionally. So I'm pretty excited for that. And once again, she is the podcast host of the Out of the Trenches podcast, which could be found on the Teach Better podcast network. And you can follow her at Dana, D-A-N-A, Goodyear, G-O-O-D-I-E-R. And both of those will be in the show notes. And I think that's going to wrap us up for this episode of GotTech the Podcast. Go out and tell your friends about the podcast. Let them know that our 100th episode is coming up and that we're going to have a lot of good content that might be valuable to them. You could go over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and check us out there. You could go to our website at www.hvspn.com. You can check out our YouTube channel. Just search for GotTech, and that will pop up. And follow us on Twitter, Nick at NickGotTech, me at Guise Got Tech, and the podcast at We Got Tech. Till next time, go out, have a little fun, show some grace, and think about what you're thankful for, and make sure you let them know about it.
Thanks for listening to GotTech the Podcast. Remember to subscribe to our show and follow us at We Got Tech on Twitter so you can stay up to date with the latest episode releases, blog posts, product reviews, and PD announcements. You can also follow Guise and I individually at Guise Got Tech and at Nick Got Tech on Twitter or on Instagram at Nick Got Tech. Finally, remember to check out our website, GotTechED.com, where we post all our episodes, articles, and resources available to you for free. Until next time.